Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's MHRA Regulatory Connect webinar. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few items so you know how to participate in today's event. You have joined the presentation listening to your computer speaker system by default. If you would prefer to join over the telephone, just select phone call in the audio pane and the dial-in information will be displayed. You will have the opportunity to submit text questions via Slido at www.slido.com using the event code #RegConnect May 25. You may send in your questions relating to the webinar at any time during the presentation, and we will collect these and address them during the Q&A session at the end of today's presentation. Please note that we will not be accepting questions using the GoToWebinar platform. It is now my pleasure to introduce your first speaker, James Pound, Interim Executive Director, Innovation and Compliance with MHRA. James?
Thank you. And if you can move to the next slide, please. So good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar on MHRA's Regulatory Connect program. As my colleague said, I'm James Pound, the Interim Executive Director for Innovation and Compliance at MHRA, and I'm also the current SRO for the Regulatory Connect program. We'll just talk through some housekeeping before we get into today's webinar. Timings will last around 90 minutes for today's webinar, and as the colleague indicated earlier, the webinar is being recorded, and we will send a link out to delegates after the event to be able to access that recording. The recording won't include the Q&A section. We'll be seeking to address questions at the end of the presentation, and we'll be looking to aggregate some of those questions so we can answer as many questions as we can, and I'll talk a little bit more about how you can do that as we go through the presentation. So if we go to the next slide, please. So there are three key outcomes from today's webinar: providing you an overview of Regulatory Connect and the MHRA vision it will help to deliver, introducing the key headlines around what will be changing for you, and how we'll be restarting a series of webinars to help you get ready for the next release in spring of 2026. So move to the next slide, please. So you'll primarily hear from two speakers today, myself as the SRO, giving the overview and introduction, and then my colleague Julian Beach, the Interim Executive Director for Healthcare Quality and Access, who'll be talking in more detail around the next release in spring of next year, and then we'll move into a Q&A panel with a wider number of individuals from the programme, and then I'll wrap up at the end of the Q&A session. So if we move to the next slide, please. So in terms of the Q&A, we'll be moderating and releasing relevant and common questions throughout. So please keep an eye on these so we can avoid repeating questions. And we'd like you to like the questions that you'd like an answer to, and that will help us prioritize the questions that we cover today. We clearly won't have time to probably answer all of the questions. However, we will save all of those questions, and that will help inform our future communications and webinars. And we'll only be answering questions relating to the scope of today's webinar. Those outside of it, we will also collect, and that can inform future webinars that we'll be doing with you. So you'll see on screen, you've got the QR code and then the relevant code to access once you are on Slido, and that's where you'll be submitting your questions. So please do take note of that code, hashtag RegConnect May 25, or use the QR code. So I'll just give you a moment to do that before we move on. So if we move on then to the next slide. So this will be the wider overview of the Regulatory Connect program. And if we move to the next slide. So I'll be walking you through the following: how RegConnect will be transforming how we work with you, the scope and timing of the Regulatory Connect rollout, and how we'll be keeping you updated and helping you to get ready for that next release anticipated in spring of next year. If we move to the next slide, please. So with the MHRA, our mission is to protect and improve public health, and our vision is to be a world-leading, enabling sovereign regulator protecting public health through excellence in regulation and science and delivering the right outcomes for patients. Regulatory Connect is a vital technology enabler as part of our wider change program. That includes our statutory performance, as well as our new innovation enabling and risk proportionate regulations, such as those around point of care manufacture, medtech and clinical trials, and more. And this is all in the wider context of the ambitions being developed as part of the NHS 10-year plan and the Life Sciences Sector Plan. So, as I said, RegConnect is a key enabler of our strategy and goals at the MHRA, and there are a number of ways in which the programme will transform how we work with you in industry, and I'll talk through the future details across the next few slides. So if we can move to the next slide, please. So for RegulatoryConnect, we are enhancing the processes, data and technology that underpin the way that we work with you. The key components are the MHRA portal on gov.uk, the Lorenz DocuBridge for ECTDs, so the Electronic Common Technical Dossier, and Microsoft Dynamics 365 Case Management System. RegulatoryConnect will deliver improved and transformed regulatory services for the authorization and registration of medicines, medical devices and healthcare products by utilising next generation technology. This is at the heart of MHRA realising its strategic vision of making the UK a world leader in risk proportionate regulation within the global system, and reflects the need for greater connectivity. Importantly, connectivity relies on high quality data and the adoption of standards, connecting the innovative medicine sector with the wider UK healthcare system and regulatory bodies early on in the product life cycle to offer an approval pathway that decreases time to market, connecting with medical devices manufacturers to capture better quality information, enabling traceability across the health system and the product life cycle, and providing the foundations of the National Health Service's Product Information Management System, PIM. Connecting with other regulators through strategic partnerships to share data about medicinal products, to reduce time to market access, and avoid unnecessary duplication or repetition of authorization decisions, thereby enabling international recognition. Connecting with international associations to share inspection site and facility information to improve the quality and safety of the global supply chain. Connecting with industry by creating a one-stop shop for advice, guidance, and all regulatory submission types to improve your experience and reduce the effort it requires for both industry and the regulator. Connecting customers with data to ensure submissions are right first time by building on automatic data quality checking on submissions, enabling us to offer immediate authorization for low-risk regulatory decisions and improved automation of notifications and submissions that do require further assessment. Connecting the MHRA with the devolved administrations across the UK and the wider health system, centred around the entire product lifecycle to improve the collaborative view and journey of healthcare product development pipelines in the UK. And then, importantly, connecting information teams within the MHRA to dramatically improve predictability and reliability of our statutory service levels for you in industry as well as for other stakeholders. If we move to the next slide, please. So in terms of predictable regulatory pathways, we'll see increased automation and self-service, supporting faster time to market, implementing new processes and systems to deliver risk-proportionate regulatory pathways, enabling the reduction of the average time for regulatory approvals from the MHRA, transforming services and the external customer and internal user experience by eliminating non-value-adding activities and simplifying policies and processes and automating low-risk, low-complexity administrative tasks. More predictability and reliability, introducing real-time performance management and work visibility internally for our regulatory services, allowing decisions to be taken dynamically on case prioritization to avoid any impact on service level agreements and statutory timeframes. And then risk proportionate regulatory pathways, enabling risk proportionate regulation, allowing a regulatory service to be handled individual regulatory activities and their submissions via different process pathways dependent on the level of risk associated with the activity, product, change requested, or the relevant organisation. If we move to the next slide, please. So transparency, traceability, and data quality thresholds. Importantly, more transparent, simplifying repeat and routine submissions and improving the transparency of the information that's held. More traceable, end-to-end traceability of products and activities across the whole product lifecycle, with the ability to view and track status through the RegulatoryConnect portal. Data captured within that portal will feed directly into our internal case management system for use by our teams of assessors and inspectors. More rigorous data standards, improving the customer experience by providing a single digital identity and organizational account for regulatory services. Data will be validated up front, applying a high threshold for data quality prior to the acceptance of submissions, reducing the risk of delay, error, or rework required during the product process. If we move to the next slide, please. So, in terms of the scope and the timing of the rollout, we will be launching RegulatoryConnect through a series of programmed releases. Last March, we launched our first release, which was the RegulatoryConnect portal to industry. And that portal allowed you to track the status of your regulatory submissions and view live authorization details. Our next release will transform how you work with the MHRA for product licensing regulatory services and is expected to be launched in the spring of 2026 next year. From this release, industry will submit and manage their product licenses via the RegulatoryConnect portal that I referred to before. And internally, we will be launching Microsoft Dynamics 365 as our internal case management system. We will have a number of future releases, and the services listed on screen are some of the key services that will be included in those future releases. This includes import notification systems, inspections, process licensing, and medical devices registration, for example. And we'll be sharing more information about those future releases, their scheduling, and their timelines at a later date, making use of the program of webinars that we've now established going forward. If we can move to the next slide, please. So it's been some time since we last spoke to industry, and we've been incredibly busy as an organisation preparing for that next release in spring of next year. And I'll talk through some of our progress since we last spoke with you. It's essential that we get this right, and so we are trying to balance a timely release of our future services whilst ensuring that we provide you with a high quality solution. The RegulatoryConnect portal that I mentioned on previous slides, and that was in the first release of the RegulatoryConnect portal to industry and a service that you are already using today. Loren's DocuBridge launch. We launched our new dossier management tool for ECTDs in March of 2024, and almost all of our ECTDs are now transferred from the previous system into the DocuBridge system. And the UK Substance Reference System public beta. We have built our own UK Substance Reference System, and this is something that is currently available as part of a public beta within the agency, and we're receiving feedback currently on that. And in terms of user-centered design, there's been lots of engagement with different teams across the organisation, as well as with external stakeholders, and we're grateful for all the input that people have made to date. There have been 3 surveys to industry with well over 100 respondents to those, 10 usability testing sessions with over 88 participants, 9 virtual research workshops with industry with over 100 plus attendees from industry, workshops including focused deep dives, segmentation of users, concept testing and walkthroughs, and usability testing on variations across product licensing, parallel imports and process licensing, user account management, payment and invoicing. In terms of the design and build for the next release of RegConnect, we've made substantial progress through the build of the next phase of the RegulatoryConnect program as well. So you'll see a substantial amount of work has been achieved, and we're making good progress in building that next release, as I mentioned, for spring of 2026. So if we move to the next slide, please. So this webinar is the first in a series of webinars that we have planned for the rest of this financial year, so up until the end of March 2026. We will continue to evolve our webinar plan to make sure the industry is ready for our future releases and that you have the information that you need to be prepared for that. We have been working very closely with the trades associations, and under our new program, we will be looking at resetting and restarting some of this engagement with those trade associations, and we're very grateful for the support that they have provided to date. We continue to engage through the wider industry for user research, and in the post-webinar survey that will be issued after today's event, there will be a call to action for those who are interested in getting involved in the future design, research and test activities with us for the RegulatoryConnect program, particularly for those whose roles and organisations are linked to process licensing, import notifications, inspections, as well as medical device registration, certificates of free sale, for example. So I would ask that you all please respond to that survey if you are interested in being involved, and your involvement will be key to making sure that the RegConnect program is a success for all of us and the benefits it will bring to the industry, to the regulator, but most importantly, the benefits it will bring for patients in the UK. I'll now pass to my colleague, Julian Beach, Interim Executive Director, Healthcare Quality and Access, to talk through what will be in the next phase of the programme. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and thank you, James. So as James has gone through, why are we doing this? So we are introducing the RegConnect system as an enabler of our strategic objectives. As an agency, we want to be world leading, enabling sovereign regulator and protecting public health through excellence in regulation, science, and delivering the right outcomes for patients. RegulatoryConnect will allow us to become more connected with industry, other regulators and external partners. It will create a faster risk proportion and predictable regulatory pathway, building on the good work that has been done across the agency in the last couple of years to increase that predictability. We aim to continue to make our processes even more transparent and traceable for everybody. So we're going to talk you through some of the key changes that you'll experience as an industry to become, so you'll be able to prepare for them, and what will happen over the next year in allowing in the sessions when they come through to bring you a demo so that you can then understand how those changes will be affected. We're calling out the most relevant and high-level activities at this time, so again, you are ready to prepare for this. So as James has already mentioned, this release captures PL, so product licensing, and then future releases, so PCL medical devices, will continue to be added over time. So just to stress, we're not changing the regulatory life cycle, but we're changing how we interact with the MHRA to deliver that. So the next slide, please. So I've got 4 slides to go through, one on registration, one on preparing to file, one on submission, and one on validation and approval. So the RegulatoryConnect portal will provide a single place to make all human medicine regulatory submissions. This will evolve over time for all regulatory submissions to be made through that portal. Within this, you will need at least 2 admins for the RegulatoryConnect portal who will create user accounts and allow access to the portal from your organization. Your admins will manage user permissions for your organizations directly within RegulatoryConnect, and we will implementing role-based permissions, the detail of which we will share in future sessions. This is to move self-service or move to self-service for user administration and provide you as an organization to have control and ownership over who has access to your information. So you can see that the information that you will need, a lot of the information and the practice will remain constant, so that people will, existing accesses, will usernames and passwords will be migrated, and then you can use those passwords in to create the new ones in the new system. Next slide, please. So when you're preparing to file, you'll still be able to apply for all the regulatory services within the MHRA, as you would expect. So to apply for regulatory submissions, you will be 100% digital and in the UK Gov format. And this will be secured only to the users that you wish to access that platform and have access to that data. But it will be a company administered responsibility. MHRA will not be involved in that user administration. So you will still continue to use the ECTD, and you will update the ECTD sequences directly through the RegulatoryConnect portal. So other route of access so for example, CESP, will not be available. They will be automatically validated, and this is a stricter validation than has previously been seen. If unsuccessful going through that validation, you will receive a report advising of any changes that you need to make. So the vocabularies, as James has mentioned, we will be continuing to be consistent with across regulatory information, but there will be a UK rate vocabulary for the validation. So these will be pre-populated and searchable when you enter product information into your application. Next slide, please. So for the regulatory submission, it will become the only point of contact for applications coming in. As I say, CESP and Intralinks will not be available. Payment of submissions will be at the point of submission and will be made before work is started on your application. Payment status will be updated and visible within RegulatoryConnect. We will be implementing a risk proportionate approach to regulation of a number of variation types. So whilst you will still submit variations against current granted licenses, that will be very much to enable you, for example, with Type 1A applications, to ensure that you enter that information correctly and self-manage that. Critical documentation, SPCs and pills will still be required. We will not and will no longer ask or accept fragments. So this was a much requested change. So SPCs and pills will be submitted as whole documents within the ECTD. Next slide, please. And the final slide. So you will still receive communications from MHRA. The RegulatoryConnect will issue communication on the application status, and visible information will be there for you to log in and review. You'll still be able to respond to VCR and RFI requests through that portal, and they will be very clear in how that is enabled to happen. The latest legal baseline for your approved products will be visible to you, enabling you to see the details of the product license and product information, and have a much clearer overview of what you need to see for your application. So this will then enable more accurate variations and enable overall the process to be more right first time of submission. So that concludes an overview of the changes that we've got coming through at this point in time.
So just to recap on what we've covered today, we've shared with you about how RegulatoryConnect is going to enable the agency, MHRA, to become more connected with you in industry, our peer regulators and external partners, that creating more predictable regulatory pathways and making our processes more transparent and traceable with those high data quality thresholds, which are important enablers of doing that. My colleague Julian Beach talked you through some of the key changes that you can expect to see when we have release 2.1 in spring of next year, and we'll be building on that in future sessions to increase the level of detail and information around release 2.1. We'll continue to speak with you, and we're currently planning our next webinar for July of 2025, so the month after next. And as we've said repeatedly, we need your help to deliver the ambition that we all have around regulation in the UK and the important underpinning that RegulatoryConnect will provide to that. So helping us around the research, the design and the testing. And the way you can do that is responding to the post-webinar survey, sharing your views and sharing your interest in being involved in some of that activity. So that should come out shortly after this, and I'm pleased to ask that you would respond to that. So if we move to the final slide. So with that, I would just like to say an enormous thank you to colleagues at MHRA who've contributed today, but also an enormous thank you to all those online, our various stakeholders who've previously supported the work in developing Regulatory Connect, who will hopefully be volunteering to get involved in the future work around Regulatory Connect, and for taking the time this afternoon to ask some really important questions that I hope we've provided some of those answers to. And as Sonia said, we'll be using those to inform and build future communication. And I look forward to speaking to you all again in July, if not before. Thank you very much.